At 3:17 a.m., the Hawthorne estate gates slid open with a hush that felt too gentle for what was happening. Nora Hassan stood on the front steps with one suitcase at her feet and her uniform still damp from scrubbing floors that never stayed clean. The night air cut through her thin coat, but the cold wasn't what made her shake. It was Vivian Hawthorne's voice. "Get out," Vivian said, smooth as polished stone. "Tonight." But what Vivian didn't know was that the truth had already slipped out of her control weeks ago, hiding in something she hadn't bothered to destroy. And then, Nora said something so quiet it almost sounded like surrender, until Vivian noticed the way Nora's fingers tightened around an old photograph tucked inside her coat. "I will," Nora whispered, "but you can't kick me out of my own story." Vivian's smile sharpened. "Your story. You're a maid." Two security guards stood behind Vivian like statues that could move on command. One shifted his weight, ready to step forward. Vivian raised her hand slightly, the way rich women signaled violence without raising their voices. "Hand me your phone," Vivian ordered. "And that bag." Nora's throat tightened. "Why?" "Because I'm not letting a bitter employee steal from me," Vivian said. Her gaze flicked to the guards. "Search her." Nora's pulse spiked. "I didn't steal anything." Vivian's eyes glittered. "If not jewelry, then secrets. And secrets are worse." One guard stepped forward and reached for Nora's coat pocket. Nora took a half step back. The photo pressed against her palm like a heartbeat. For one sharp second she imagined the guard tearing it away, Vivian's hands snatching it, the last proof disappearing into the mansion's darkness. Then the front door opened again. A man's voice, hoarse and exhausted, echoed down the steps. "Mother, what are you doing?" Ethan Hawthorne stood in the doorway in a wrinkled dress shirt, hair uncombed, eyes red from sleepless nights and nursery crying. He looked like a man who had been running from something and finally ran out of space. Vivian's face softened instantly, a performance so practiced it almost fooled the air. "Ethan, darling, I'm protecting you." Ethan's gaze slid to Nora and hesitated, as if seeing her meant admitting something he'd been refusing to name. Nora held his eyes anyway. She had spent months in this house watching the Hawthorne family pretend to be loving, while quietly dismantling the people inside it. She had watched Vivian's smile tighten around Lila Hawthorne, Ethan's wife, like a silk rope. She had watched Lila's pregnancy become less about a mother and more about a legacy. Vivian lifted her chin. She's been out of line. She's been attached. Ethan's jaw tightened. She's the maid. She's been here every day. She helped when Lila. Vivian snapped. Exactly. She was too close. Nora felt her hand drift toward her coat pocket again, protective and instinctive. Vivian noticed. Her eyes narrowed. "What is that?" Nora swallowed. "Nothing." Vivian smiled without warmth. "Nothing is always something." "Give it." Ethan's voice hardened. "Mother, stop!" Vivian ignored him, stepping closer to Nora. "Now." Nora understood then. Vivian wasn't throwing her out because of a broken vase or a snapped comment. Vivian was throwing her out because Nora had seen something she shouldn't have seen, and Vivian was making sure Nora couldn't tell anyone. Nora lifted her chin. "If I leave tonight," she said softly, "you'll have no one to blame when the truth comes out." Vivian's smile froze. "What truth?" Nora looked past Vivian, past the chandeliers and guards, toward the upstairs nursery where the twins had finally fallen asleep. "The truth about the twins," Nora said. Ethan stiffened. Vivian's eyes turned to ice, and in that moment, Nora understood the most dangerous thing in a mansion like this. The truth was not a fact. It was a weapon. 2 days earlier, Nora had still been invisible. That was how she survived wealthy houses. She kept her eyes down, spoke only when spoken to, moved like a shadow that cleaned up everyone else's mess. She had taken the Hawthorne job because her mother's hospital bills were drowning them, because her younger brother's tuition was overdue, because humility didn't pay rent. But the Hawthorne estate wasn't just wealthy. It was a kingdom, and Vivian Hawthorne ruled it with control disguised as care. Ethan was the heir, the face of the family's philanthropic empire. In public he was calm and charming, the kind of man magazines called steady. But in private he was frayed, trapped between a wife he loved and a mother who owned him. Lila Hawthorne, Ethan's wife, had once been a bright woman who painted watercolors and talked about building a home that felt warm. After marriage, warmth became performance. Vivian didn't like warmth. Vivian liked obedience. When Lila got pregnant with twins, the estate celebrated publicly. But privately, Vivian tightened her grip so hard the whole house seemed to hold its breath. She replaced Lila's doctor with a family-approved specialist. She controlled appointments. She insisted the nursery be set up in a wing closest to her own bedroom. She hired a new nanny before the babies were even born, a nanny who looked at Vivian before she looked at Lila. And then there were the small humiliations Vivian favored, the kind that didn't leave bruises but left a person smaller. "Don't eat that," Vivian would say at dinner, smiling. "Too much sugar for pregnant women. Are you sure you're capable of twins?" Vivian would ask sweetly. "Some women are not built for it." Lila would swallow her anger, because Ethan would squeeze her hand under the table as if to say, "Please, not tonight." Nora would clear plates and pretend she didn't hear anything. But one night, while carrying folded laundry past the master suite, Nora heard voices through the cracked door. Vivian's voice, cold and precise. "Remember, Lila, these babies belong to this family." Lila's voice trembled. "They're my babies." Vivian laughed softly. "They're your burden. They're my legacy." Nora froze in the hallway, laundry basket heavy in her arms. Then she heard another voice on speakerphone. A doctor's voice. "We can do it," the doctor said. "But you must understand, Miss Hawthorne, the timing has to be perfect." Lila's breath hitched. "Do what?" Vivian's voice dropped lower. "Fix what nature didn't give us." Nora stepped back before she could hear more, heart hammering. "Fix." Timing. Perfect. Those words stayed in her for days, like a stone in her stomach. 2 weeks later, the twins were born after an emergency delivery. The house erupted into celebration. Ethan cried when he held the babies, but his eyes stayed clouded, as if he couldn't stop wondering whether he deserved them. Lila was pale and weak, her body shaking from exhaustion and blood loss, her smile too thin. Vivian stood beside the bassinets like a saint in pearls. Nora stood in the corner like she always did. And she saw what no one else noticed. One twin had a tiny crescent-shaped birthmark behind his ear. The other did not. Hours later, when the hospital staff finished their checks and the family prepared to go home, Vivian insisted on personally choosing the twins' hats and blankets. Matching, of course. Everything had to match. Back at the mansion, when Nora helped with the first bath, her hands shook as she lifted the twin with the birthmark to wash him gently. She memorized it, the small crescent, the way it made him unique. Then, she bathed the second twin. No birthmark, 2 distinct babies, identical in face, different in that one tiny mark. But later that night, when the nanny brought the twins into Lila's room, Nora felt her stomach drop. The birthmark was gone. Or rather, it was on the other baby. Nora blinked hard, then blinked again. Maybe she was wrong. Maybe she was tired. Maybe the light was different. But Nora had been poor her whole life. Poor people became experts at noticing tiny differences, because tiny differences were often the line between safety and danger. And this felt like danger. The next day, Vivian sent Nora to clean the West Wing, a long unused corridor of sealed rooms and old furniture covered in cloth. "This wing gathers dust," Vivian said with a pleasant smile. "Be thorough." Nora nodded, but her skin prickled. Vivian never sent her anywhere without a reason. In the West Wing, Nora found a locked desk in a study that smelled like old books and secrets. One drawer was slightly open, as if someone had rushed. She should have shut it. She didn't. She slid it out. Inside were neatly stacked documents. Beneath them lay an old photograph, worn at the edges like it had been held too many times in secret. Nora lifted it and felt the room tilt. It showed a young woman on a hospital bed, holding newborn twins. The woman's hair was messy. Her cheeks were tear-streaked, but her smile was real. Nora stared at the woman's face and felt her breath catch, because the woman in the photo looked like her. Same eyes, same jawline, same tiny mole near the left brow that Nora covered with makeup when she wanted to look professional. She flipped the photograph over. A date, written in pen. 8 years ago. And beneath it, a name. Nora Hassan. Nora's hands went cold. She had never been in that hospital 8 years ago. At least, not that she remembered. But there was one thing she did remember. A missing year in her teenage life that no one ever explained clearly. A year her aunt dismissed as illness, while her mother turned her face away. Nora stared until her eyes burned. Footsteps sounded in the hallway. She shoved the photo into her coat and slid the drawer shut, just as Vivian's shadow appeared in the doorway. Vivian looked at her like she could smell fear. "Why are you in this wing?" Nora forced her voice steady. "Dusting, ma'am." Vivian smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You're very thorough." Nora nodded, throat tight. Vivian stepped closer, perfume expensive and suffocating. "Some areas of this house don't need your thoroughness." Nora understood the threat. And she understood something else. Vivian already suspected the photo existed. Vivian was simply waiting to see who would find it. Now, on the front steps at 3:17 a.m., Vivian's eyes were fixed on Nora's coat pocket the same way a predator fixes on a hiding place. Ethan stepped down beside his mother, his voice shaking. "Nora, just give it to her and go. We'll talk tomorrow." Nora stared at him, and something bitter rose in her throat. Tomorrow. The word rich people used when they wanted to delay a problem until it became someone else's tragedy. Nora shook her head. Tomorrow is how people disappear in this house. Vivian's smile sharpened. Listen to the maid's drama. Ethan's face tightened. "Mother." Vivian cut him off. "Ethan, you have a family now. Twins. Heirs. You need peace, not a maid's obsession." Nora's voice trembled, but she pushed it forward. "One of the twins has a birthmark. It moved." Ethan blinked, stunned. "That's impossible." Vivian laughed softly. "Exactly. She's imagining things." Nora swallowed. "Then let me show you." Vivian's eyes turned hard. "You will not touch the babies again." Ethan hesitated. Vivian stepped closer to him, lowering her voice. "Don't let her humiliate us. Do not let a servant drag you into scandal." Nora watched Ethan's jaw tighten with shame. Shame was Vivian's leash. Nora drew a slow breath. "I'll leave," she said quietly. Vivian's smile returned. "Good." Nora added, "But I'm taking the photo." Vivian's face changed. Just a flicker, but it was enough. Ethan noticed too. "Photo?" he repeated. Vivian's voice snapped sharper. "What photo?" Nora pulled it out slowly. Ethan stared. His face drained as if the air had been sucked out of him. Because the woman in the photo didn't just resemble Nora, she resembled Leela. Same eyes, same mouth, the kind of resemblance that made coincidence feel like a lie. Ethan's voice cracked. That looks like Leela. Vivian snapped, it doesn't. Nora's voice shook. It looks like me. And it looks like her. Ethan's hand lifted, trembling, as if he wanted to touch the photo without believing it existed. Vivian lunged for it. Nora jerked back instinctively. A guard moved forward. Ethan barked, "Stop." The guard froze. The night air felt sharp enough to cut skin. Ethan's eyes locked onto Vivian. "Mother, what is this?" Vivian smiled tightly. "A coincidence. People look alike." Nora whispered. "Then why are you desperate to take it?" Vivian's eyes flashed. "Because you're trespassing on family matters." Nora swallowed hard. "Family matters? You're kicking me out." Vivian hissed. "You're being paid." "That's all." Nora's chest tightened. She looked up toward the nursery windows again, and she said the sentence that made Ethan's breath catch. "I think I'm the twins' mother." Silence collapsed. Ethan stared as if he hadn't heard right. "What did you say?" Vivian's voice turned to ice. "You're insane." Nora shook her head, tears burning. "I don't understand it. I don't remember it. But the photo, the date, the birthmark, the way you're—" Vivian snapped. "Get her out." The guards moved. Ethan stepped between them and Nora, body tense. "No." Vivian's eyes widened. "Ethan." Ethan's voice shook with anger. "Inside, all of us. We're going to talk to Lila." Vivian's smile became dangerous. "Lila is resting." Ethan didn't blink. "Then wake her." Vivian stepped closer to him, hissing, "Don't do this in front of staff." Ethan's eyes flashed. "Stop calling her staff like she's not human." Vivian stiffened, shocked at the rebellion. Nora's throat tightened. They moved inside. Nora walked between two guards, the photo clenched in her hand, heart hammering, the mansion's warmth feeling like a trap. As they passed the nursery door, Nora heard the twins' soft cries and felt an ache that didn't make sense. An ache like memory trying to return. In the master suite, Leela lay pale in bed, hair loose, eyes half open. She looked like someone whose body had been through war, while her mind was still trying to pretend it hadn't. She blinked when she saw Ethan. "What's happening?" Ethan's voice was strained. Nora found something. Vivian cut in, sweetly. "Nora is tired. She imagined something. I was simply dismissing her." Lila's eyes flicked to Nora. Something shifted in Lila's face. Not recognition, exactly. More like discomfort, like seeing a stranger who looks too much like you. Nora held out the photo. "Mrs. Hawthorne, do you know this?" Lila took it with trembling hands. Her eyes widened, then filled with tears. "That's," she whispered, "that's me." Nora's breath caught. "It's not." Lila shook her head, crying harder. "It has to be. My eyes. My mole. My—" Nora whispered, "I have the same mole." Ethan's voice cracked. "What is going on?" Vivian reached for the photo. "Give me that." Leela jerked it away instinctively. "No." Vivian's eyes flashed. "Leela, don't be dramatic." Leela's hands shook as she turned the photo over and saw the back. The date. The name. "It says Nora Hassan," Leela whispered. Nora's throat tightened. "That's my name." Ethan stared at Vivian. "Mother." Vivian smiled thinly. "A mistake." Lila's voice trembled into anger. "A mistake? You kept an old hospital photo of twins hidden in the West Wing. Why?" Vivian's tone sharpened. "Because you're exhausted and you need rest." Leela's breathing quickened. "Stop telling me to rest." Ethan stepped forward, jaw clenched. "Answer her." Vivian looked at Ethan like he had betrayed her by speaking. Then she turned to Nora with sudden contempt. "You were hired to clean. And you chose to dig." Nora's voice shook. "I didn't choose. It found me," Leela whispered, terrified. What does it mean? Nora forced the truth forward. It means your twins might not be your twins. Leela went still, her face blanking out as if the mind sometimes did that when it could not carry the weight of a thought. Ethan's voice was hoarse. What? Nora swallowed. I noticed a birthmark. It moved, like the babies were switched. Vivian laughed softly. Absurd. Leela's voice cracked. Ethan, check them, please. Ethan hesitated, trapped between rationality and fear. Vivian's eyes sharpened. Don't you dare. Ethan looked at Lila. Then, at Vivian. Then he turned and strode toward the nursery. Vivian moved to follow, but Leela grabbed her wrist. Don't, Leela whispered. Just don't. Vivian looked down at Leela's hand like it was an insect. Leela's voice cracked. If you've done something, if you've touched my babies. Vivian smiled, cruel and quiet. You should be grateful you have any babies at all. Leela flinched as if struck. Nora's stomach dropped. Grateful. That was not a word a loving mother-in-law used. It was a word a warden used. Lila whispered, shaking. What did you do to me? Vivian leaned in. I saved you from yourself. Ethan returned minutes later carrying one twin in his arms, face pale. One has a birthmark, he whispered. Behind his ear, Nora's breath hitched. Ethan's voice cracked, and the other doesn't. But the hospital record said identical twins. Lila began to sob. So, Ethan turned to Vivian. Explain. Vivian's eyes hardened. You're letting a maid poison your marriage, Ethan snapped. Explain. Vivian's gaze turned to Lila. You want truth? She said softly. Fine. Lila couldn't carry children. Lila froze. What? Vivian continued, coldly. Miscarriages, fragile constitution. If I left it to nature, you would have no heirs. Ethan's throat moved. Lila, is that true? Lila whispered, horrified. I lost 2 pregnancies. But the doctor said. Vivian cut in. Doctors sell hope. Lila's eyes burned. So what did you do? Vivian smiled. I found a solution. Nora's blood ran cold. Ethan's voice shook. What solution? Vivian's eyes flicked to Nora. A strong body, a usable womb. Lila screamed. No. Nora staggered as if the room had tilted. I don't remember. Vivian's smile sharpened. Of course you don't. Nora's heart slammed. If I carried babies, there would be records. Vivian said calmly. There are. And there are ways to buy them. Ethan stared at his mother, horror spreading. You bribed a hospital. Vivian didn't deny it. Lila whispered, broken. Why do I feel like I've been asleep for years? Vivian leaned closer. Because you let me run your life. Ethan's voice rose. We're doing DNA tests. Vivian smiled. DNA can be manipulated, Ethan snapped, not if we do them ourselves. Vivian's eyes glittered. You think you can win against me with science? Ethan's voice shook with rage. I'll win against you with truth. Vivian's face tightened. Then she looked at Nora, expression turning lethal. Do you know what happens to women who accuse powerful families? Vivian asked softly. Nora's blood went cold. Vivian turned to the guards. Remove her. Now, Ethan shouted. No, but the guards moved anyway, because Vivian's authority was older than Ethan's. Nora backed away, clutching the photo like it was her only oxygen. Leela screamed, Don't touch her. Vivian's eyes flashed. You're weak, Leela. Nora's voice broke into desperation. If you take me away, you can keep the lie forever. Vivian leaned in, whispering so only Nora could hear. Exactly. Then Leela did something unexpected. She grabbed her phone with shaking hands and called a number she hadn't dared call in years. Dr. Kenji Sato. Leela whispered. It's Leela. I need you. Now. Private. No one else. Vivian's head snapped toward her. Who are you calling? Leela's voice rose with sudden strength. The doctor you fired because he asked questions. Vivian's eyes narrowed. You don't get to call anyone without my approval. Lila spat, shaking. I'm done needing your approval. Ethan stared at his wife like he was seeing her for the first time. Vivian's calm cracked into fury. You ungrateful girl. Lila's eyes burned. You stole my life. Vivian raised her hand as if to slap her. Ethan caught Vivian's wrist mid-air. Silence fell. Ethan's voice was low, shaking. Don't touch my wife. Vivian stared at him, stunned, as if she couldn't believe her leash had snapped. Then she smiled, slow and dangerous. Fine, she whispered. Let's play truth. The next day became a chain of doors and whispers. Vivian tried to confiscate phones, but Ethan changed the security codes, only to discover Vivian had override access. Vivian tried to isolate Nora in the staff wing, but Leila demanded Nora remain in her suite, under her protection. Dr. Sato arrived at dawn, face tight, eyes wary like a man walking into a minefield. He took one look at Vivian and stiffened. Vivian smiled sweetly. Doctor. Dr. Sato's jaw tightened. Mrs. Hawthorne. Lila thrust the photo toward him. Have you seen this? Dr. Sato's eyes widened. He looked at Nora's face, then Lila's, then the date. His throat moved. This is from St. Bridget Hospital. Vivian's eyes turned cold. You don't know what you're talking about. Dr. Sato's voice tightened. I do. I worked there briefly. Years ago. Before I was transferred. Lila's breath hitched. Transferred by who? Dr. Sato didn't look at Lila. He looked at Vivian. Vivian's smile stayed in place. You're mistaken. Dr. Sato swallowed. There was a case. Twins. A young surrogate. Confidential. The paperwork was unusual. Nora's vision blurred. Surrogate? Leila whispered. So it's true. Vivian's voice snapped. Stop! Dr. Sato continued, quieter. The surrogate's name listed was Nora Hassan. Nora felt the room spin. Ethan whispered, horrified. Nora, were you ever pregnant? Nora shook her head violently. No. I would remember. Dr. Sato's eyes softened with pity. Not if you were sedated. Not if you were young. Not if someone controlled what you were told. Young. Nora's missing year pressed against her mind like a locked door. Vivian's voice sliced through. Enough. You're all being dramatic over paperwork. Lila screamed. Over my babies. Vivian's eyes flashed. They are not your babies. Silence dropped so hard it felt like the walls shook. Lila stared at her, face breaking. What did you just say? Vivian's smile sharpened into cruelty. I said what you've been too weak to hear. You didn't carry them. You can't even keep yourself stable without medication. I gave you children so Ethan wouldn't leave you. Ethan's face twisted. Medication? Lila froze. What medication? Vivian smiled. Not knowingly. Lila's face drained of color. Nora's stomach dropped. Because Nora had been making Lila's nightly tea from Vivian's special blend, the one Vivian insisted helped Lila sleep. Nora's hands began to shake. You drugged her, Nora whispered. Vivian's eyes glittered. I calmed her. Ethan's voice turned savage. Mother, you're poisoning my wife. Vivian smiled. I'm preserving my family. Ethan stepped closer, shaking. You're destroying it. Vivian leaned in, whispering, Without me, you have nothing. Ethan's jaw tightened. Then, I'll have nothing and be free. Vivian's eyes flashed. She turned abruptly and walked out, heels sharp, moving like a woman going to finish a job before her window closed. Ethan's phone buzzed. A nursery camera alert. Ethan's face went white. The twins. They ran. The nursery door was open. The room was too quiet, and one bassinet was empty. Lila screamed. No, Ethan checked the other bassinet with shaking hands. One twin remained, crying. The twin with the birthmark was gone. Vivian had taken him. And she took him at the exact moment the truth began to solidify, because in Vivian's world, when truth threatens legacy, legacy grabs a child and runs. Lila collapsed to her knees, sobbing. "My baby." Ethan's voice was hoarse, furious. "Lock the gates. Now." But Vivian had built the estate's exits like a magician builds escape routes. She was already gone. Dr. Sato's face went pale. If she's repeating the old pattern, she'll go to St. Brigid's. There's a private neonatal wing. A back entrance. A place where records can disappear. Ethan's eyes narrowed. "Then we go." They drove into dawn. Lila clutched the remaining twin in her arms, whispering, "Stay with me. Stay with me." Nora sat beside her, staring at the old photo like it might start speaking. Ethan drove like a man chasing the last piece of his life. At St. Bridget Hospital, Ethan forced access with authority and threat, but money didn't buy time. A nurse stepped in front of them. "You can't be here." Ethan's voice was cold. "My newborn is inside." The nurse hesitated, then looked toward a corner camera as if waiting for permission from someone invisible. Nora's stomach dropped. Because Vivian's power didn't end at the mansion, it reached here too. Then Nora saw her, a woman in a pearl-colored coat turning a corner fast, holding a swaddled bundle. "Vivian." "There," Nora whispered. Ethan ran. Vivian glanced back, eyes flashing, then shoved through a side door into a service stairwell. Ethan followed. Lila stumbled behind, crying, the remaining twin pressed to her chest. In the stairwell, Ethan grabbed Vivian's arm. Vivian hissed, "Let go." Ethan's voice broke. "Give him back." Vivian's eyes glittered. "You don't even know who he is." Ethan froze. "What?" Vivian leaned in, voice low and cruel. "Lila can't carry children. She never could. I fixed it. And now, because you're letting a maid and a hysterical woman ruin my work, I'm taking what belongs to this family." Lila sobbed. "That's my baby." Vivian looked at her with contempt. "You're a placeholder." Nora's voice cracked. "You used me." Vivian's eyes narrowed. "You were useful." Nora's throat tightened. "I didn't consent." Vivian smiled. "Consent is for equals." The baby began to cry, the sound sharp in the stairwell. Vivian held the child tighter in irritation, not comfort. Ethan saw it. He saw she didn't hold the baby like love. She held him like property. Ethan's voice trembled. "Give him to me." Vivian's smile sharpened. "Or what?" Ethan swallowed. "Or I call the police." Vivian's eyes glittered. "And tell them what? That your mother arranged surrogacy because your wife was infertile? You'll burn with me." Ethan froze. Vivian's smile widened. "Exactly." Then the remaining twin cried in Lila's arms, a tiny sound that reminded them what the real stakes were. And something changed in Ethan's face. He pulled out his phone and hit record. "Mother," he said clearly, loud enough for the stairwell to catch every echo. "Tell me what you did." Vivian's eyes narrowed. "Stop that." Ethan didn't stop. "Tell me you paid a hospital to implant embryos into a teenager. Tell me you drugged my wife. Tell me you kidnapped my son." Vivian's face tightened. Then she hissed, furious, "Fine. Yes, I arranged it. I arranged everything. Because without heirs, this family dies." The words echoed. Lila sobbed. Nora's stomach lurched. Ethan's eyes went dark. "Thank you," he whispered. Vivian blinked. "What?" Ethan held up his phone. "Now we have proof." Vivian's composure cracked. She tried to push past them with the baby, but Nora stepped into her path. Vivian shoved her hard, and Nora hit the wall, pain flaring. The photo slipped from Nora's pocket and fluttered onto the steps. Vivian's eyes locked on it, startled for half a second. And that half second was enough. Lila lunged and took the baby back, clutching him to her chest, sobbing, "I have you." Ethan held Vivian's arm away, breathing hard. "It's over." Vivian's eyes burned. Nothing is over. But sirens were already coming. Dr. Sato had called security, and Ethan, trembling with rage and clarity, sent the confession video to his lawyer and to an investigative journalist at the same time so no one could bury it with a bribe. Hospital security and police intercepted Vivian before she reached the exit. She protested loudly, accusing everyone of hysteria, but the facts were now louder than her voice. The confession video, the attempted kidnapping, the old photo, and Dr. Sato's testimony. DNA tests were done under independent oversight, sealed and recorded. The results confirmed what the old photo had promised. Nora was the twins' biological mother. But not by choice, not by romance, by exploitation. Nora had been used as a surrogate during the missing year of her teenage life. Sedated and controlled, her memory blurred by medication and trauma. The embryos were created using Ethan's genetic material, and an egg donor Vivian had selected. The twins were Ethan's biological children. Lila was not their biological mother. And the story Vivian tried to sell, that Nora was a maid trying to steal a rich family, collapsed into ash. The humble worker had been telling the truth. The powerful mother-in-law was the criminal. But the hardest question wasn't legal. It was human. Lila sat holding the twins, her hands trembling, eyes swollen from crying. Nora sat across from her, the old photo between them on the table like a third heartbeat. Ethan stood by the window looking like a man whose entire identity had been rearranged. Lila whispered, broken, "If they're not mine, do I have to give them up?" Nora's throat tightened. "I don't want to take them away from you." Lila looked up, tears spilling. "But you're their mother." Nora's voice shook. "I'm their body's mother. You're the one who has loved them every day since they were born." Lila sobbed. "I loved them." Nora nodded. "I can see that." Ethan turned, voice hoarse. "We'll do this the right way. The boys come first." Lila stared at him. "You knew I couldn't carry children." Ethan flinched. "I didn't know she drugged you. I didn't know she." Lila cut in, shaking. "But you let her control everything." Ethan lowered his head. Nora's eyes stayed steady. "Your mother tried to destroy me to protect your family name." Ethan's voice cracked. "I'm sorry." Nora didn't soften. Sorry doesn't return years. Ethan nodded. "I know." Justice moved fast because the evidence was too complete to bury. Vivian was charged with kidnapping, medical fraud, coercion and conspiracy. The hospital faced investigations. Doctors lost licenses. Administrators resigned. The Hawthorne name cracked in public. Vivian, who once ruled ballrooms, sat under fluorescent lights in a holding cell, her pearls replaced by a plain jumpsuit. In court, when the judge asked Vivian, "What is your relationship to the children?" Vivian couldn't answer in a way that sounded like love. When the judge issued an order barring contact with the twins, Vivian's face finally revealed what she truly feared. Not prison. Not shame. Losing control. Ethan made a public statement. Not polished. Not scripted. He admitted his mother's crimes. He accepted responsibility for failing to protect Lila and for failing to question Vivian sooner. He announced a foundation to support victims of reproductive coercion and medical exploitation, funded by Hawthorne assets, redirected by court supervision. People called it damage control. But Nora watched Ethan's face and saw a man trying to atone in the only way he could. Lila made the decision that took the most courage. She didn't demand the twins be taken from her. She didn't demand Nora disappear. She insisted on a legal path that centered the children, recognizing Nora's rights and trauma while honoring the bond Lila had formed with the twins. Some people gossiped. But Lila stopped caring about gossip the day she realized love wasn't measured by biology. It was measured by who stayed. Months later, the estate was quieter. Not peaceful, but honest. Nora moved out of the servant quarters and into a small guest house on the property, not because she wanted the Hawthorne kingdom, but because she refused to be displaced again. She began therapy and memory work. Some nights she dreamed of hospital lights and woke shaking. Some mornings she stared at the old photo until it blurred. And sometimes, when one twin reached for her with sleepy hands, something inside her softened, not ownership, but connection. One evening, Nora sat in the garden with the twins crawling on a blanket. Lila sat beside her, tired but calmer, watching them with fragile peace. Lila whispered, "Do you hate me?" Nora's throat tightened. "No." Lila's eyes filled. "I didn't know." Nora nodded. "I know." Lila looked down, voice breaking. "But I benefited." Nora's voice was quiet. "We both did and we both didn't." Ethan approached slowly, holding 2 cups of tea, hands careful like he was trying not to spill anything else in his life. He offered one to Nora first. Nora hesitated, then took it. Ethan's voice was low. "I can't undo what she did." Nora met his eyes. "No," Ethan swallowed. "But I can spend the rest of my life making sure it never happens again." Nora's gaze flicked to the twins, then back. "Start," she said quietly, "by never letting anyone call me the Maid again." Ethan nodded. "Never again." Vivian sat behind glass in a visitation room, hair pulled back, hands empty. She asked for Ethan. He didn't come. She asked for the twins. The court said no. She asked for Lila. Lila declined, and when Vivian whispered to no one, "I did it for family," the guard's indifferent stare reflected the only truth Vivian could not bear. Family was never something she built. It was something she stole. Back at the estate, the twins fell asleep in a nursery that finally felt warmer, not because the chandeliers shone brighter, but because the air was no longer poisoned by fear. Nora stood in the doorway watching them, her heart heavy and strange. Lila came beside her and whispered, "They're safe." Nora nodded. "For now." Lila looked at her. "Why do you say it like that?" Nora swallowed, because the truth doesn't end when the villain is arrested. The truth is something you have to live. Lila's eyes filled with tears. Nora placed the old photo on the dresser where sunlight could touch it openly. No more hiding, no more drawers, no more shadows. The photo proved who the twins' mother was, but it also proved something bigger. A powerful woman had tried to erase a humble one. And failed. Nora looked at the sleeping twins and whispered the final line like the last shot of a film. "They tried to throw me out of this house," she said softly. "But they couldn't throw me out of the truth." Nora didn't sleep that night. She sat on the edge of the narrow bed in the staff quarters, fully dressed, her suitcase still by the door like a warning. The old photo lay on her lap, and every time she stared at it too long, her chest tightened, as if her body recognized a memory her mind refused to touch. Outside, the Hawthorne estate was quiet in the way rich houses were quiet, like silence itself had signed an agreement. But inside that quiet, Nora could hear things if she listened hard enough. A distant door closing, footsteps that didn't belong to staff, a low voice in the hallway that cut off when she moved. She pressed her fingers to the mole near her left brow, the one she shared with the woman in the photo, the one Lila Hawthorne swore was hers too. 2 faces, 1 mark, and twins upstairs whose birthmark had moved. Nora whispered to herself, "I'm not crazy." Then her phone vibrated. Unknown number. A single message appeared. "Stop digging. Leave tonight. Or you'll leave in an ambulance." Nora stared at it until her vision blurred. For a second she considered deleting it, pretending she never saw it, the way poor people learned to survive threats they couldn't fight. But then she thought about the twins' soft cries, thought about the moment Vivian's eyes flashed when she saw the photo, and Nora realized something with a cold clarity that made her hands stop shaking. The message wasn't meant to scare her into silence. It was meant to make her run before she could talk. Which meant the truth was real. She took a screenshot. Then she deleted the message, because she knew the sender might have access to her phone through the estate Wi-Fi. Vivian always acted like she owned the air. Nora stood, opened her coat, and tucked the photo into the lining, deeper than a pocket, closer to her ribs. She kept her breathing quiet, because fear made sound, and sound made targets. At 4:02 a.m., a knock came at her door. Soft, polite. Nora's stomach dropped. Vivian didn't knock at staff doors in the middle of the night. She approached slowly and asked through the wood, "Who is it?" A woman's voice replied, calm and unfamiliar. "House security. Mrs. Hawthorne asked us to escort you out." Nora's pulse spiked. Escort. Out. At 4 a.m. This wasn't firing. This was removal. Nora backed away from the door, eyes scanning the room. There was one window. One narrow bathroom. Nowhere to hide. And she knew if she opened the door, 2 guards would come in and the photo would vanish. She swallowed hard and called out, "I'll come out in a minute. I need to change." The voice outside paused. "Make it quick." Nora moved fast. Not panicked, controlled. She grabbed her phone, opened her camera, and began recording video, aiming it at the door as she spoke quietly. "My name is Nora Hassan. I'm recording this because I believe I'm in danger. 2 security guards are outside my door. Mrs. Vivian Hawthorne ordered them here to remove me. I have evidence about the twins." She saved the video and uploaded it to a cloud drive with a password her brother would recognize. Then she typed him a message. "If anything happens to me, check the folder named photo." Her hands shook as she hit send. Then she heard the doorknob turn. Not a polite wait. A test. Nora's stomach turned. They had keys. She moved to the window and pushed it open just enough to feel the cold air. The drop was not high, but the garden stones below could crack an ankle. She hesitated, heart hammering. Then she heard Vivian's voice, low, from somewhere down the hall. "Don't let her speak to Ethan." Nora's blood went ice, so this was what it was. Vivian was cutting her off before sunrise, before Ethan could cool down and ask questions, before Leela could call Dr. Sato, before DNA tests could happen. Nora climbed out the window. Her shoes hit the garden stones, pain shooting up her foot. She bit back a cry and ran, half-crouched through hedges slick with dew. Behind her, the staff door burst open. A shout. "Stop!" Nora ran harder. She didn't run toward the front gates. That would be obvious. She ran toward the west wing, where old walls created blind spots, and where she knew one small service exit was often left unalarmed because Vivian didn't believe anyone would dare. She reached the exit, yanked the handle, and slipped out into the night. The estate road stretched ahead, empty and dark. Nora ran until her lungs burned, until the mansion's lights were smaller behind her, until she reached the main road where a taxi might pass before dawn. But no taxis came. Only a black SUV. It rolled up beside her, slowly, window-tinted, engine purring like a threat. Nora's heart slammed. The passenger window lowered. Vivian Hawthorne's face appeared, calm and perfectly composed, as if she had just stepped out for an early morning tea. "You're making this difficult," Vivian said softly. Nora's body turned to ice. She backed away, hands up as if that could stop the world from closing in. "I have proof," Nora whispered. Vivian smiled. "That's why you have to disappear." Nora's voice shook. "Why? What did I do to you?" Vivian's gaze was cold and almost curious. "You exist. The SUV door opened. A man stepped out, broad, silent. Nora turned and ran. Her foot screamed with pain, but she ran anyway, because fear was a better painkiller than any medicine. She ran straight into headlights. A car screeched. A horn blasted. Nora stumbled back, blinded, heart pounding. The car stopped inches from her knees. The driver door flew open. Ethan Hawthorne stepped out, breathing hard. "Nora!" he shouted. Behind Nora, Vivian's SUV slowed. Vivian's voice carried from the window, sweet. "Ethan, darling, get in. She's running because she stole something." Ethan's eyes flashed, darting from Nora to Vivian. "What is going on?" Nora's chest heaved. "She's trying to silence me." Vivian laughed softly. "She's trying to manipulate you." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Manipulate me? With what?" Nora reached into her coat lining and pulled out the photo with shaking fingers. "With this," she whispered. Ethan stepped closer, eyes narrowing. Vivian's smile thinned. Ethan took the photo and stared. The longer he looked, the more his face changed. Shock, confusion, then something deeper. Recognition of a resemblance he didn't want to admit. Vivian's voice sharpened. "Ethan, don't indulge her." Ethan's voice was hoarse. "Mother, why does this woman look like my wife?" Vivian's eyes turned to steel. "Because your wife is weak and dramatic and attracts drama." Nora's voice rose, trembling. The twins' birthmark moved. Someone switched them. Ethan's hands tightened around the photo. "That's impossible." Nora's eyes burned. "Then why is she here at 4 a.m.? "Trying to take me." Ethan looked at Vivian. "Why are you here?" Vivian smiled. "Because you weren't answering your phone. And because she's unstable." Ethan's gaze flicked to Nora's shaking hands, her scraped palm, her limping foot. Unstable. Or hunted. Ethan swallowed. "Get in the car. Both of you. Now." Vivian's eyes flashed. "Ethan." Ethan's voice rose. "Now." Vivian hesitated, then lifted her chin and stepped out of the SUV as if she was doing Ethan a favor. She climbed into Ethan's car's passenger seat with the grace of a woman who believed she could still control the steering wheel. Nora got into the back seat, clutching her coat, clutching her proof, clutching her breath. Ethan drove back to the estate like a man dragging a truth behind him. In the mansion, the air felt tighter than before, as if walls were listening. Ethan didn't go to Vivian's sitting room. He didn't go to his office. He drove straight to the master suite. He pushed the door open and turned on the lights. Lila flinched awake, eyes wide with fear. "Ethan?" She whispered. "What happened?" Ethan's voice shook. "We need to talk. Right now." Vivian walked in behind him, serene. "Lila, darling, don't exhaust yourself. Nora is spiraling. She needs medical help." Lila's gaze snapped to Nora. Nora stood near the door, breathing hard, hair loose, coat damp with dew, eyes burning with something between fear and determination. Lila stared, and something shifted in her expression again. That same strange discomfort of seeing a reflection that didn't match. Nora held up the photo. Lila's hand rose slowly, trembling. "Where did you get that?" Nora's voice cracked. "Your West Wing, in a drawer, hidden." Vivian's smile tightened. "Coincidence?" Ethan stepped forward. "Lila, look." Lila took the photo. Her eyes widened, and tears spilled instantly, like the image had pierced something inside her. "That's me," Lila whispered. Nora shook her head, voice shaking. "It looks like me too." Ethan's breath caught. Vivian's eyes turned hard. "It's a trick." Lila flipped it over and read the back. Her hands began to shake. "It says Nora Hassan," Lila whispered. Nora's throat tightened. "That's my name." Ethan's voice went low. "Mother." Vivian lifted her chin. "Paper can be forged." Lila's breathing quickened. "Why would she forge this?" Vivian's eyes flashed. "Because she wants money. She wants status. She wants—" Nora cut in, voice trembling. I want to remember my life. Silence fell. Ethan stared at Nora. Remember your life? Nora swallowed. There's a year I can't remember. When I was a teenager, my family always said I was sick. But I've had nightmares. Hospital lights. A baby crying. And when I found that photo, it felt like my body recognized it. Leela's face went pale. Vivian's voice was sharp. This is nonsense, Ethan turned on Vivian. Then explain why your security tried to drag her out at 4 a.m. Vivian's smile returned. Colder, because she's a threat to peace. Ethan's jaw clenched. To whose peace? Vivian stared at him. Lila whispered, trembling, Ethan, I need to see the babies. Ethan nodded, and for a moment Vivian's eyes flickered with something like calculation. They moved to the nursery. The nanny stood near the bassinets, posture stiff, eyes flicking to Vivian as if waiting for instructions. Vivian smiled. See? 2 perfect boys. Everything is fine. But Nora stepped forward, voice shaking. One has a birthmark behind his ear. The nanny swallowed hard. Lila's hands trembled as she leaned over the first twin, carefully lifting the baby's cap. No birthmark. Lila frowned, confusion tightening. Then she lifted the second twin's cap. There it was, a tiny crescent behind the ear. Lila exhaled sharply. So one has it. One doesn't. Nora's heart hammered. Yesterday, it was the other one. Ethan's face tightened. How could that happen? Vivian's voice was calm. Babies develop marks. Skin changes. Dr. Sato's voice echoed in Lila's memory, though he wasn't here yet. Lila's face pinched like she was reaching for a thought she couldn't fully grab. Then Lila noticed something small. The wristbands. They weren't the hospital wristbands anymore. Vivian had removed them, claiming they irritated the baby's skin. Now each baby wore a soft fabric band with embroidered names. Lucien. Miles. Vivian's chosen names. Lila's stomach turned. Because she remembered wanting different names, and she remembered Vivian smiling and saying, "We can decide later, darling. You're tired." Lila whispered, "Why did you remove the hospital bands?" Vivian's eyes glittered. "Because I care." Ethan's voice was low. "Or because you didn't want us to verify them." Vivian's smile sharpened. "Verify what?" Ethan held up the photo. "Verify the truth." Vivian stared at him, expression darkening. Then she turned to the nanny, voice soft and deadly. "Go downstairs." The nanny moved quickly, relieved to escape. Vivian turned back, calm again. "You're all exhausted. You're turning nonsense into a crisis." Nora's voice cracked. "Then let's do a Dina test." Today, Vivian's smile widened. "No," Ethan blinked. "Why not?" Vivian's gaze fixed on him. "Because you will not humiliate this family with a circus." Lila's voice rose, shaking. "Humiliate? This is about my babies." Vivian leaned toward her, voice quiet. "You should be grateful you have babies at all." Lila flinched. Nora felt anger flare. "Stop saying grateful like you own them." Vivian's eyes snapped to Nora. "I do own this house. And you're standing in it." Ethan stepped closer, voice hard. "Mother, if you won't agree to Dina testing, you're confirming suspicion." Vivian stared at him. Then she smiled, and that smile was colder than anger. "Fine," Vivian said softly. "Do your test. But understand something. Truth has consequences." Ethan's jaw tightened. "I'm ready." Vivian's gaze slid to Nora. "Are you?" Nora's throat tightened. "Yes." Vivian leaned in slightly. "Then you're braver than you look." And Nora realized, with a chill, that Vivian wasn't scared of Dina. Vivian was preparing a counterattack. Hours later, Dr. Kenji Sato arrived at the mansion. He wasn't the family's doctor anymore. Vivian had replaced him after Lila's second miscarriage, claiming he was incompetent. But Lila had called him anyway. Because sometimes the first person who asks the right question becomes the only person you can trust. Dr. Sato looked tired and wary. His eyes moved over Ethan, Lila, and finally Nora, and something in his face tightened as if he recognized the shape of a story he'd seen before. Vivian greeted him with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Doctor. Dr. Sato nodded stiffly. Mrs. Hawthorne. Lila held up the photo with shaking hands. Tell me you've seen this. Dr. Sato stared. His breath hitched slightly, controlled, but real. This is from St. Bridget Hospital, he said quietly. Vivian's eyes flashed. You don't know what you're talking about. Dr. Sato's voice stayed steady. I worked there briefly years ago, before I was transferred. There was a case. Twins. Confidential surrogacy. The paperwork was unusual. Nora's stomach dropped. Surrogacy? Vivian's voice snapped. Stop. Dr. Sato continued, eyes on Ethan now. The surrogate's name listed was Nora Hassan. Nora felt the room tilt. Ethan stared at Nora. Nora, were you pregnant? Nora shook her head violently. No. I would remember. Dr. Sato's eyes softened. Not if you were sedated. Not if you were young. Not if someone controlled what you were told. Young. Nora's missing year burned in her mind like a locked door. Lila's face went pale. Vivian, did you do this? Vivian's smile sharpened. I did what I had to do. Ethan's voice rose, shaking with rage. You used her body. Vivian's eyes glittered. I gave her money. She should thank me. Nora's hands shook. I never got money. Vivian's smile didn't change. Then someone else did. Nora's blood went cold. Her aunt. Her mother's silence. The missing year. The way her family avoided the topic. Nora's voice cracked. You paid my family, Vivian shrugged lightly. I paid for a solution. Lila's breath hitched into a sob. You stole my motherhood. Vivian looked at her with contempt. You didn't have motherhood to steal. Lila flinched. Ethan stepped forward, voice low and dangerous. You drugged my wife, too. Vivian's eyes narrowed. I calmed her. Lila's hands shook. I've been drinking your special tea. Vivian smiled. And you've been sleeping better. Lila's face drained. You've been controlling me. Vivian leaned in, voice soft. Yes, because you're unstable. Ethan snapped. Stop. Vivian's eyes flashed. Without me, you have nothing. Ethan's jaw tightened. Then I'll have nothing, and be free. Vivian stared at him with a fury that looked almost shocked. Then she turned and walked out, heels sharp on the marble, moving like a woman going to finish a job before her window closed. Ethan's phone buzzed. A nursery camera alert. Ethan's face went white. The twins. They ran. The nursery door was open. The room was too quiet. One bassinet was empty. Lila screamed, a sound that turned her into pure mother, pure terror. No. Ethan checked the other bassinet with shaking hands. One twin remained. Crying. The twin with the crescent birthmark was gone. Nora's blood turned to ice. Vivian had taken him. And she took him at the exact moment the truth was starting to solidify. Because in Vivian's world, when truth threatens legacy, legacy grabs a child and runs. Leela collapsed to her knees, sobbing. My baby. Ethan's voice turned hoarse and savage. Lock the gates. Now. Security moved. But Vivian had built the estate's exits like a magician builds escape routes. She was already gone. Dr. Sato's face went pale. If she's repeating the old pattern, she'll go to St. Brigid's. There's a private neonatal wing, a back entrance, a place where records can disappear. Ethan's eyes narrowed, breathing hard. Then we go. They drove into dawn. Lila clutched the remaining twin in her arms, whispering, Stay with me. Stay. Nora sat beside her, staring at the old photo like it might start speaking. Ethan drove like a man chasing the last piece of his life, and Nora realized something that made her stomach twist. Vivian hadn't just stolen a baby. Vivian was trying to decide which mother would survive the truth. St. Bridget Hospital looked peaceful from the outside, like a place where lives began and ended with dignity. Inside, it felt like a maze designed to swallow the truth. Ethan moved through the corridors with a fury he had never allowed himself before, because fury was messy, and Ethan had been trained to be polished. Lila stumbled beside him, still bleeding emotionally, clutching the remaining twin so tightly her arms trembled. Nora followed half a step behind, her heart pounding, her mind split between terror and a strange pull toward the baby Vivian had taken. Dr. Sato walked with them, jaw set, eyes sharp, as if he'd spent years waiting for someone to finally challenge the kind of corruption that hid under clean floors and kind smiles. They reached the neonatal wing door. A nurse stepped in front of them. "You can't be here." Ethan's voice was cold. "My newborn was taken." "I'm here." The nurse's eyes flicked toward the corner camera like she was waiting for permission to breathe. Nora felt her stomach drop. Because Vivian's power didn't end at the mansion. It reached here, too. Lila's voice cracked. "Please, he's a baby." The nurse swallowed, conflicted, then hardened. "I'm sorry." And then Nora saw it. A pearl-colored coat turning a corner fast, a swaddled bundle held tight. "Vivian." "There," Nora whispered, and her voice sounded like a prayer and an accusation at the same time. Ethan ran. Vivian glanced back once, eyes flashing, then pushed through a side door into a service stairwell. Ethan followed. Lila stumbled after, sobbing, the remaining twin pressed to her chest. Nora ran too, the old photo pressing against her ribs, like it was trying to guide her home. In the stairwell, Ethan caught Vivian by the arm. Vivian hissed, "Let go." Ethan's voice broke. "Give him back." Vivian's eyes glittered. "You don't even know who he is." Ethan froze. "What?" Vivian leaned in, voice low, cruel, intimate. "You think those twins were meant for your wife?" "Lila can't carry children. She never could." I fixed it. Lila made a sound like the air had left her body. "Stop." Vivian's gaze turned to her, contemptuous. "You're a placeholder, Lila." Lila flinched as if struck. "He's my baby." Vivian smiled. "He's your attachment. There's a difference." Nora stepped closer, trembling. "You used me." Vivian's eyes narrowed. "You were useful." Nora's voice cracked. "I didn't consent." Vivian smiled without warmth. "Consent is for equals." The newborn in Vivian's arms began to cry. The sound sliced through the stairwell, sharp and desperate. Vivian tightened her hold in irritation, not comfort, and Ethan saw it. He saw that Vivian didn't hold a baby like love. She held him like property. Ethan's voice turned steady in a way that scared even Vivian. "Give him to me." Vivian's smile sharpened. "Or what?" Ethan swallowed, eyes burning. "Or I call the police." Vivian leaned closer, whispering like a threat wrapped in silk. "And tell them what? That your mother arranged surrogacy because your wife was infertile? That you benefited? That your perfect family is a fraud? You'll burn with me, Ethan." Ethan froze. Vivian's smile widened. Exactly. This was Vivian's true weapon. Not money. Not influence. Shame. Shame made people cooperate with their own cage. Lila sobbed harder, rocking the baby she still had, whispering, "Please, Ethan, please." Nora watched Ethan's face change. He looked down at the crying newborn in Vivian's arms, then at the baby in Lila's arms, then at Nora, whose hands shook like her body remembered pain her mind couldn't name, and something snapped in Ethan. Not into rage, into clarity. He pulled out his phone and hit record. "Mother," he said clearly, loud enough for the stairwell to echo every word. "Say it again. Tell me what you did." Vivian's eyes narrowed. "Stop that." Ethan didn't stop. "Tell me you paid a hospital to implant embryos into a teenager. Tell me you drugged my wife. Tell me you kidnapped my son." Vivian's face tightened. For a second she hesitated, and in that hesitation Nora thought she might actually feel shame. Then, Vivian lifted her chin. "Fine," she hissed. "Yes. I arranged it. I arranged everything, because without heirs this family dies. And your wife was too weak to give you what you deserved." The words echoed in the stairwell. Lila gasped, sobbing. Nora's stomach lurched. Dr. Sato's face went pale. Ethan's eyes went dark. "Thank you," Ethan whispered. Vivian blinked. "What?" Ethan held up his phone. "Now we have proof." For the first time, Vivian's composure cracked into something close to panic. "Delete that," she snapped. Ethan didn't move. Vivian turned, trying to push past them up the stairs, clutching the baby tighter. Nora moved on instinct, stepping into Vivian's path. Vivian shoved her hard. Nora hit the wall, pain flaring through her shoulder. The old photo slipped out from her coat lining and fluttered onto the steps. Vivian's eyes locked on it, startled, as if it had teeth. That split-second distraction was everything. Lila lunged forward, snatched the baby from Vivian's arms, and clutched him to her chest with a sob that sounded like survival. "I have you," Lila cried. "I have you." The newborn quieted against her warmth like he recognized her heartbeat. Vivian reached out, furious, to grab him back, but Ethan caught her wrist, holding her away. "It's over," Ethan said, shaking. Vivian's eyes burned. Nothing is over. But it was, because sirens were already coming. Dr. Sato had called hospital security, and Ethan had sent the confession video to his lawyer and to a trusted journalist at the same time, so no bribe could bury it quietly. Hospital security poured into the stairwell. Then police. Vivian tried to speak over them, tried to control the room with her voice the way she always had, but control didn't work when handcuffs clicked. An officer asked, "Ma'am, why were you carrying a newborn in a restricted stairwell?" Vivian's mouth tightened, and when Ethan played the video, Vivian's silence became the loudest confession in the building. Lila sat on a bench in the corridor afterward, both twins in her arms, trembling, crying into their tiny hats as if she could soak fear out of them. Nora sat across from her, numb, the old photo on her lap again, now no longer hidden. Ethan stood by the window, staring at the hospital parking lot as if he could see the last decade of his life parked out there, waiting for him to admit it was real. Dr. Sato approached quietly. "We need to do DNA testing properly," he said. "Independent oversight. Sealed chain of custody. No Hawthorne influence." Ethan nodded, voice hoarse. "Do it." Vivian, from the other side of the corridor, watched them with eyes full of hate. Not fear. Hate. Because Vivian didn't fear punishment. She feared losing ownership. Hours later, the tests were taken under strict supervision. Nora sat alone in a small exam room as a nurse swabbed her cheek. The simple act felt enormous, like the world could finally be measured in something objective. When the nurse left, Nora stared at her reflection in the metal cabinet door. She thought of her missing year. She thought of waking up some nights drenched in sweat, hearing a baby cry in her dreams. She thought of her mother's silence, her aunt's too quick explanations. And she whispered, "Who was I before you decided for me?" The results came back the next day. Ethan insisted everyone be in the same room. He didn't want Vivian to spin the truth through separate conversations. He wanted one moment, one shared impact, one reality no one could pretend away. Lila held the twins, both asleep now, their faces peaceful in a way that felt unfair. Nora sat rigidly, hands clenched. Dr. Sato opened the envelope slowly. Ethan's breathing was loud. Lila's eyes were wet already, as if her body knew before her mind did. Dr. Sato read quietly, then looked up. "The twins are biologically related to Ethan Hawthorne," he said. Ethan exhaled shakily, a mix of relief and horror. "Dr." Sato continued, voice careful. They are not biologically related to Lila Hawthorne. Lila's face crumpled. Her arms tightened around the babies like she could keep them from leaving her just by holding harder. Dr. Sato's eyes softened. They are biologically related to Nora Hassan. The room went silent. Lila's sob escaped her like she'd been punctured. Nora's throat closed. Ethan stared at Nora like he was seeing her as a person for the first time, not a uniform. Nora whispered, trembling, "So it's true." Dr. Sato nodded once. "Yes." Lila's voice broke. "So I'm not their mother." Nora's eyes filled with tears. "You are their mother," she whispered. "You're just not their biology." Lila shook, sobbing. "I loved them. I love them." Nora nodded, crying quietly. "I can see that." Ethan stepped closer, voice hoarse. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know." Nora didn't look away. "Your mother knew." Ethan flinched, and for the first time the full shape of the crime became undeniable. This wasn't a family secret. This was medical exploitation. This was coercion. This was the use of a poor girl's body as a resource, and the attempt to erase her by calling her unstable and throwing her out of a mansion at 3 a.m. Vivian tried one last move. When police questioned her, she shifted instantly into the posture of victim. "They're all lying," Vivian said calmly. "My daughter-in-law is unstable. The maid is obsessed. Ethan is exhausted." But then the detective asked one simple question. "Why did you confess on video?" Vivian's mouth tightened, and for the first time, she had nothing to buy her out of silence. The legal system moved faster than Vivian expected, because there were too many witnesses and too much evidence. The confession video. The attempted kidnapping in a hospital stairwell. Dr. Sato's testimony about St. Brigid's unusual paperwork and forced transfers. Financial records of payments to specific doctors and administrators. The drugging of Lila through sleep tea. The old photo that linked a past surrogacy case to the present twins. Vivian was charged with kidnapping, coercion, medical fraud, conspiracy, and unlawful administration of medication. The hospital faced an investigation. Doctors lost licenses. Administrators resigned. St. Brigid's private wing was audited in ways that made long-buried secrets start sweating. The Hawthorne name cracked publicly. Vivian, who once walked through ballrooms like a queen, sat under fluorescent lights in a plain holding cell, her pearls replaced by a jumpsuit. But Vivian's punishment was not only legal, it was personal. Because in court, when the judge asked, "What is your relationship to these children?" Vivian opened her mouth and paused. She couldn't say grandmother in a way that sounded like love. And when the judge issued an order barring contact with the twins, Vivian's face finally revealed what she truly feared. Not prison. Not shame. Losing control. Outside the courthouse, reporters asked Ethan if he would protect his mother. Ethan looked into the cameras with a hollow steadiness. "I will protect my children," he said. "I will protect my wife. And I will protect the woman my mother tried to erase." Lila stood beside him, holding the twins, pale but upright. Nora stood slightly behind, not hiding, just not used to being visible in the daylight. People whispered, of course. They whispered about surrogacy. They whispered about scandal. They whispered about who was real family. But the world's whispers didn't matter as much as the twins' breathing. The hardest question came later, in private. Lila sat on a couch in the guest house the court had arranged for Noura on the edge of the Hawthorne property, holding one twin while the other slept in a bassinet. Noura sat across from her, hands trembling around a cup of tea she hadn't made herself. Ethan stood by the window, silent. Lila whispered, "Broken. If they're not mine, do I have to give them up?" Nora's throat tightened. "I don't want to take them from you." Lila looked up, tears spilling. "But you're their mother." Nora's voice shook. I'm their bodies, Mother. You're the one who has loved them every day since they were born. Lila sobbed. I loved them, Nora nodded. I can see that. Ethan swallowed hard. We can do this the right way. Lila's eyes flashed with pain. The right way? There is no right way when someone steals your life. Ethan flinched. Because Lila was right. Vivian didn't just steal a baby. She stole years of choice. She stole the word consent from Nora. She stole the word safety from Lila. And she nearly stole the word mother from both. The court-appointed family mediator proposed an arrangement that felt unusual to outsiders, but made one truth clear. The twins would not be treated like property. They would be treated like children. Lila would remain their legal guardian for now, given her marriage to Ethan and their established bond. But Nora would have legally protected parental rights, ongoing therapy support, and increasing custodial time as she healed and as the children grew. Nora listened, numb, and then whispered, I don't want to be paid to disappear again. The mediator nodded. You won't. Lila looked at Nora through tears and said something that surprised them both. I don't want you to disappear, Lila whispered. Not anymore. Nora stared, throat tight. Why? Lila's voice broke. Because the only person who wanted you gone was the person who hurt all of us. Ethan's eyes filled with tears he refused to let fall. Months passed. Not smoothly. Healing is never smooth. Nora began trauma therapy, memory work, medical evaluations. Some nights she woke shaking, hearing phantom cries. Some mornings she stared at the old photo until it blurred, trying to pull her missing year out of the dark. Lila stopped drinking any tea she didn't make herself. At first, she couldn't stand the smell of chamomile. It made her feel trapped. Ethan began therapy too, because he had to face the truth that he had been raised by a woman who called control love. He had to learn a different language. In time, the estate became quieter. Not peaceful. Honest. Vivian's portrait still hung in the main hall for a while, because removing it felt like admitting the world had changed. Then one day Ethan took it down himself. He carried it to the storage room where Vivian had hidden the old photo and leaned it against the wall, face turned inward. He didn't destroy it. He didn't need to. Silence was enough. One evening, Nora sat in the garden with the twins crawling clumsily on a blanket. They were older now, heavier, louder, full of life. Lila sat beside her, watching them with a tired, fragile peace. Lila whispered, Do you hate me? Nora's throat tightened. No. Lila's eyes filled. I didn't know. Nora nodded. I know. Lila looked down, voice breaking. But I benefited. Nora's voice was quiet. We both did, and we both didn't. Ethan approached slowly, holding 3 cups of tea, made by his own hands, as if that simple act could undo years of manipulation. He offered one to Nora first. Nora hesitated, then took it. Ethan's voice was low. I can't undo what she did. Nora met his eyes. No. Ethan swallowed, but I can spend the rest of my life making sure it never happens again. Nora's gaze flicked to the twins, then back to Ethan. Start, she said quietly, by never letting anyone call me the maid again. Ethan nodded, voice steady. Never again. Vivian sat behind glass in a visitation room, hair pulled back, hands empty. She asked for Ethan. He didn't come. She asked for the twins. The court said no. She asked for Lila. Lila declined. And when Vivian whispered, to no one, I did it for family, the guard's indifferent stare reflected the only truth Vivian could not bear. Family was never something she built. It was something she stole. Back at the estate, The twins fell asleep in a nursery that finally felt warmer, not because chandeliers shone brighter, but because the air was no longer poisoned by fear. Nora stood in the doorway watching them, her heart heavy and strange. Lila came beside her and whispered, "They're safe." Nora nodded. "For now." Lila looked at her. "Why do you say it like that?" Nora swallowed. "Because the truth doesn't end when the villain is arrested. The truth is something you have to live." Lila's eyes filled with tears. Nora placed the old photo on the dresser where sunlight could touch it openly. No more hiding, no more drawers, no more shadows. The photo proved who the twins' mother was. But it also proved something bigger. A powerful woman had tried to erase a humble one, and failed. Nora looked at the sleeping twins and whispered the final line like the last shot of a film. "They tried to throw me out of this house," she said softly. "But they couldn't throw me out of the truth,